Councilor Dion. No. Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to turn the meeting over now to Dr. Yanni for comments and reports from the Board of, actually, is there any correspondence? I should have asked that first.
Yes. So all the correspondence were via email. On January 25th, 2021, we had much correspondence about open school. So from Cynthia Doris, Deanne McAvoy, Jane Camarada, Lynn Palizzi, Mary Ellen Bott, Gail Singer, Jean Marie Furman, Gina Weinberg. Okay, so that was all on January 26th. Another one from Deanne McAvoy, Sharon and John Tiberia. And every one of those are about either hybrid learning or resuming full-time in-person learning. Continued on January 26th, Jill Byrne, Laura Escobar, Lisa Iametti, Mrs. Kaur, Charlotte Patel, Claudia Rudnett, Diane Russo. Again, this is all about full-time learning. Now on January 28th, we have Matt Howard, Kathleen Kilfoyle, Gina Weinberg about COVID testing for winter sports, Suzanne Bush about the CSE meeting, Kenneth Altamarino about college comments and choices, and Jason Petrello about an OBEN resident issue.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Dr. Yanni now for the Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. The month of February in the last couple of days is not sparing us with snow and real winter weather, so looking forward to the spring. Lots of activities going on. I want to take this opportunity first to thank Linda Ninesling and our entire custodial crew and ground crew for the work that they have done over the past couple of days. Morning, even the day of the Super Bowl, cleaning, and just to make sure that the students and the teachers and administrators were ready to come to school. Calendar right now, we used 2 snow days, so the calendar right now is still intact, and that means that on May 28th, school will still be closed. Obviously, if we use a snow day, then that's the first day that is going to go. But as of right now, is intact. To my senior class listening at home, welcome back. It was nice to see a lot of the seniors come back. Yesterday, Monday, they started. I know that this has been a difficult year, but we're happy to have them back. And please make sure you continue to follow all the safety procedure that we have in place. Our students all around the schools continue to be very engaged and excited. Visited many schools in the morning and the afternoon at dismissal and many activities. The other night we had a med science show in 2nd grade, and it was quite impressive to see almost 100 students with lab coats and goggles and doing science experiments. It was very nice, and I want to thank the Miss Diorio, Miss Ostroff, and Miss McAlwee for organizing that event, which turned out to be a family event, because usually it's just the 2nd graders coming in, but with the fact that they were online, even the older and younger brothers and sisters were able to participate, which was very nice, and I think it sets the tone for future years. I want to also congratulate all the athletes. We had a signing ceremony. I know there was one done in the past, but Greta Flanagan, she's going to running Geneseo, very proud. Anna Silva, fencing, Lafayette. Gabby Treble, soccer, Quinnipiac. And Noah Rodnett, fencing of Vassar College. Very proud and congratulations. Amazing. It was nice to see the parents, coaches coming together. So we see some kind of resemblance to normality, which we look forward to. I'm also very proud of the virtual enterprise students. They are advancing to the second round of the National Business Planning Competition, Plan Competition. And they were a total of 2,392 students in the United States. And they were selected and they're moving on. So very competitive pool. I want to wish them the best of luck. We have Jillian Vicari, Faith Camarata, Vincent Arnedos, Sammy Cohen, and Aiden Russo. Very congratulations. We'll be watching the practice and so excited, and best of luck. In terms of the COVID situation, a little COVID update. Like I said, we brought the seniors back. We are constantly evaluating everything, and we're going to continue to keep you posted. Regarding the sports, high-risk sports have been started today. This afternoon was first game that I saw in almost a year, and I was watching the basketball girls, and it was exciting to see them, even though the gym was empty. But I know that the parents were watching at home, and it was so nice to see them, and their determination and strength is something that very, very proud. We are, as you know, as you have probably received an email from our Director of Athletics, Mr. Trentowski. We are going to be testing athletes, high-risk sports athletes. The testing information is coming, or most likely started on Saturday. This test, the test is a no cost to the district and obviously to the students, but it's also an opportunity for the community to get tested if they're willing to, if they want to do that. I really want to take this opportunity to thank the parents for their patience and support on this. This is not easy. From coming back to school, the seniors and all the other grades. I know it takes a lot. I know it takes a lot when students are home on Zoom, on call, and you have to adjust your schedule. And I remember the other night, we were up pretty much all night because we don't want to call a snow day, a remote day, if we don't have to. So I cannot thank you enough for your patience, and hopefully the winter and everything else will be behind us and we can move forward. Tonight also we'll have an opportunity to share the second budget presentation. Please continue to follow the process. We try to be as clear as possible, but if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to call my office anytime. I'm here to support you and to support the students. To my community listening, please make sure you follow us on Twitter. We have 524 followers. We're trying to get to 1,000. I'm sure we'll get there soon. And I want to wish you everybody a wonderful, well-deserved break. Be safe, stay safe, and we'll continue to update on the great news from our students and our schools. Thank you. I'm going to pass the microphone to Dr. Moho for the introduction of the next presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over the past few years, the Board of Education has been discussing the possibility of expanding our world language program to the elementary level. What Dr. Bell is going to be sharing with you tonight is a way that we believe we could move forward towards that goal, and we see this as a next step toward a fully realized program. One of the things that we're beginning to realize is, while earlier in the year we had hopefully anticipated that next year would be back to normal or a very typical year, we're not exactly sure what that means yet and what that looks like. So what Dr. Bell is going to present is a plan that, even if the situation is more similar to this year than it is to a typical year, we believe we could still move forward and make progress towards that goal. So thank you for giving us the opportunity tonight, and I will turn it over to Dr. Bell.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here again. I'm excited to be here to talk about the incipient step, perhaps, of a foreign language in the elementary school program. And you charged us with thinking a little bit more about what would be a good next step for a foreign language in the elementary school or FLES program. And so we went back, and Dr. Mulhall and Dr. Vacchio at Vernon Elementary and I had a number of conversations about what might work best and what we thought we could bring next year. Within the kind of the context that we're working with in a variety of ways, we thought that we would start with the type of program in which students, especially in 6th grade, have a beginning level of foreign language exposure. And I thought I would just start by talking for a moment about some of the objectives of a FLES program and what we would be hoping to do in that first year of learning a world language. And obviously, one of the most important things, as we know, is that we would like to see our children start to learn language at an earlier age so they can really begin to acquire the language while they're at an age in which language is more easily accessible and they kind of absorb it and develop those skills a little more naturally. So that's an important part to start with. And the level of communication we would hope that they start to move through in the elementary school is what we would call the novice levels. And that's aligned with national standards. And there's 3 novice levels: novice low, novice mid, and novice high. And over the course of an elementary program, the goal would be for students to really begin to start to communicate at that very emergent level. The other aspect of any world language program is to build cultural competence, and there's a few building blocks for that. So we're always thinking about how we can start to do that with our youngest children. And one of the building blocks for developing that idea of competency with interactions and cultures that are different from ours is to start to develop a positive and open attitude towards cultural differences. And the younger we start with children on developing that type of thinking, the easier it is for them to start to really appreciate and value differences among different cultures. The second step is really actually developing self-awareness of one's own culture and one's own worldview. And then a lot of people think that the level of developing knowledge of a different culture is one of the most important things, and that's the idea of, kind of understanding about foods, holidays, and those types of practices. But one of the other important things that we try to develop is the idea of expanding children's worldview. And that is embedded into the world language program. One of the ways that we've seen that, or we would see that, especially if we had a Mandarin Chinese program, is when the teacher starts to talk about time and says, well, what did you do yesterday? What would you do tomorrow? And so in our Western perspective and worldview, we would point to behind ourselves when we were talking about what we did yesterday. It's a natural gesture. And when we say, what are you going to do this weekend, we might gesture with our hands in front of us. Interestingly, in China, it's the reverse. And so when you are talking about what you did yesterday, you gesture in front of you. And when you talk about what you are planning to do tomorrow, you point over your shoulder behind you. And the reason for that in the Chinese worldview is because you can see what happened in the past. It's knowable to you, but you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And that's why it's behind your body. So that's the idea of kind of helping children develop their worldview and having that be embedded in a language program. And thought you'd find that interesting. I found it fascinating when someone shared that with me. And then the other idea is always to have children develop the ability to interact with people who are different from them. And that's something that we hope that all of our graduates leave here with that as a practical skill. So with those objectives in mind, what we're really trying to think about doing for next year is we're thinking about, and we're going to show you kind of a 3-year plan, and we'd like to recommend that in the first year, we start with a Mandarin Chinese program for all 6th grade students. And so students would take this as like a regular instructional part of their day, and we're not exactly sure, but we know we'd like it to be for all students. We're not exactly sure exactly what exact days it would fall on, but we want to make sure that it's a substantive program for them. And then after that 6th grade program, they would go and choose a language of study as a sequence that they would then study in 7th and 8th, and then continuing into 9th and 10th grade as a sequence of study. That's what we would refer to as a sequence. In the second year, if that's successful, we'd like to move that down a year lower, and we'd like to talk about moving Chinese to study for all students in 5th grade. And then in 6th grade, students would begin that sequence of study in a language of choice, be that Mandarin, French, or Spanish. And so just to show you quickly, this is kind of a repeat here of the year 2, so you can see that, and compare it to a potential program in year 3, in which that whole process would just move down a little bit. And of course, once we got to that part of the, it doesn't seem that far away, just a couple of years away, we would obviously potentially take a look at adjusting that based on the success of the program. As far as some costs associated with the district, with the program, we already have in the budget a part-time Mandarin Chinese teacher that we have posted, and we are actively searching for a Mandarin Chinese teacher to join us next year. So we would be adding to the budget a half-time teacher for the upcoming year. And then should we extend this into the lower grades in years 2 and 3, in each subsequent year, that would involve another additional half-time teacher on top of what was already there. So we kept the presentation really short so that we'd have plenty of time for discussion and questions. And if I'm happy to explain anything that wasn't clear, you would like to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, I have a question. So once they take in 4th grade the Chinese, in the 5th grade they have to choose either Chinese, French, or Spanish? Or do they get an opportunity to rotate through those 3 languages and then pick the one that they really want to study in the following year?
It's interesting because when we think about decision-making, I think many adults think that in decision-making, when you have to choose something for a long period of time, it's good to try that out. And so many districts have in the past had what you're describing is take a little bit of each language, and then children can make the decision about which one they'd like to study for over a period of time. What we've actually found, and many districts have found this, and there's a good body of research on it, is that the decision-making for children is actually very different. So the choice of what language they want to study is usually contingent upon family, history or attraction to a particular language because of some sort of heritage piece. What language their friends are taking is a big factor. And then sometimes which teacher they like best. So when we've done, and actually when I was a very young teacher, I worked in a district that had 3 different languages as the type of rotation. And we actually did some research and asked students at the beginning of the year which language they thought they'd study. We compared it with the same students at the end after they'd done the rotation, and only about 8% of the students actually changed their choice of what language they wanted. So when we thought about that and what would be the most effective use of kids' time and our resources, we thought, let's go ahead and start that study instead of rotating among the three.
I just want to jump in and say, we thought that that is a viable option as well. So while the research tells us one thing, if we find that our experience and the better fit here is to give students exposure to multiple languages, we could certainly try that as well. So I was imagining this as our plan, but that we would be evaluating it as we move through the following year, and we could certainly revisit it as we make progress.
Of a teacher also, they'd be able to see those teachers in action and then have an additional selection information. So yeah, I agree, it might be because the teachers or their friends are in those classes and they all like one teacher or they like, I mean, it's hard to make somebody decide in 5th grade what they're going to be taking and to get to 11th grade.
And then if they want to change their mind, it has bigger consequences than just having fun, exploring languages. So we're open to both avenues, and the good thing is we don't have to make a decision about that part just yet, but we could gain some experience, see how it goes next year, and revisit that when we're planning for year 2 and beyond.
How does it look for a full-time Mandarin teacher?
That's what I was just going to ask. Half-time.
So
We posted it.
We posted it, and we know we have, a couple more weeks that the position will be open for, and we have a number of teachers that applied last year but did not pursue the position because it was not a full-time position or was not even going to grow into one. So we're going to circle back around and touch base with those people again and see if they'd like to reapply to this one.
Hi, Dr. Bell. It's John McAvoy. How can we promote the new Chinese language program as opposed to just a survey? You know, it's exciting. We want to engage the students right away. Anything you have planned or you're thinking of?
So yes, last year what we did is we brought students to Vernon. We brought Spanish students and French students, and then kind of developed a video introduction of Mandarin and did a little bit of a workshop, with the students. We're going to be doing that this year remotely. So we will be doing it in a virtual format the Friday after we get back from the break, and then we'll go ahead and have students start to enroll in that way. It's definitely been a little bit more of a challenge this year with some of the limitations we're facing. We're hoping in future years we'll have the Mandarin Chinese teacher and we'll be able to kind of build on that. And even the idea of students kind of being exposed to the different languages. It could be that we do a mini program of some sort even next year where the students come down and kind of do a little bit of an introduction series. That's been really enjoyable and successful in many places.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Bell, hi, it's Darren Gerbosi. Thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
My question is, say the Mandarin or Chinese program doesn't kick off, whether the enrollment's low, whether we cannot find an educator. Are we still bringing the other current foreign languages down to 6th and 5th and 4th over the years? Is that still the plan? And you said, potentially adjust prior to 4th grade. Obviously, this is years down the road. I mean,
Right.
Is there an ultimate goal we'd love to start at 2nd grade if this all worked, to take it to Teddy Roosevelt, or is there an age you feel it's really wasted dollars at this point?
I personally never feel that language instruction is wasted dollars, especially in the young ages. It's you get your more money's worth out of the young ages than you do worth working with older students when it comes to language instruction. A premier world language program would include a type of immersion program that was really focused on building proficiency from kindergarten. So if our goal at some point became that we wanted to really have our graduates be bilingual and have that as a marketable skill that they could put on their resumes from the moment they leave high school, then we would be talking about a really integrated program from kindergarten.
Okay, and just the first question, if Mandarin doesn't kick off, are we still bringing down the current language offering to the Vernon level? And
so that would be certainly, I think, something that we might have to go through the process of, of recruitment and trying to really see if we can have this move forward. And then if it doesn't, I think we would need to come back to you and ask for your guidance on what would be a step two if our initial, attempt at pulling the Mandarin into the 6th grade isn't successful initially.
Great, thank you.
Yeah?
I just wanted to jump in and say, you all were very generous, as you have been with every new program that we've initiated here in the district, and even though the enrollment numbers were low, you agreed that we could still move forward with it, but we lost not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 potential teachers over the course of the summer. So that's why we think having this full-time position will really make us much more attractive to potential candidates. We just did our initial posting, but we will continue to work diligently to fill that position. We'll keep you posted on what the enrollment is and let you know, but we would anticipate that even if we didn't have that number of 12, we would still hope to run the course and just use that as a way to build over time.
So I think we're working on a year at a time, and we think we have a good plan to start, and hopefully we'll build on that success. And next year, I hope to be able to come back to you and show you how wonderful it is and what the children are learning, and have some students here speaking Mandarin to you and presenting all of our successes to you. And that would be very exciting. So I appreciate your support, and that's the goal for a year from now.
Thank you so much,
All right, thank
Dr.
you.
Bell.
Anything else, Dr. Yanni, or should we move on to the
We move to the approval of the
Minutes?
minutes, and then we'll go into the presentation.
Okay, we'd like to approve the minutes of the workshop meeting on January 5th, 2021, and January 19th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And now we'll move on to our business and facilities report, the second budget presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Kowalski. This is a second budget presentation, so we're going into a little bit more details than we had in the previous presentation. And again, like I said in the past, all this presentation will be posted online. So if the community has any question, I know this is not an usual format, but if you have any question, please do not hesitate to call my office and call, and I'll hopefully be able to clarify your questions. So we're looking at the mission, the vision, and the mission statement, which I think is important that we continue to focus on what is the vision for our district, and look at the budget mission, budget preparation, and the budget as of today, and obviously the timeline. The vision is the same, and I've been discussing with the students. I had the National Honor Society yesterday. I was visiting. There were over, I want to say, 50 or 60 students, and talking about the idea of empowering students, and what does that mean to create an environment that is empowering students. And you keep going back to the same concept of creating that environment that is supportive, providing the resource, and make sure that the students are challenged and rewarded for their talent. The idea is to make the school, to make Oyster Bay, East Norwich, the best possible school in the country and the world, and to give the students all the opportunities. And I say that with more and more confidence every day. We have so much talent, and the students are amazing, and I'm impressed every day by what I see, and happier and happier to be here as their superintendent of schools. When you look at the budget mission, the idea is to support and promote the district goals. It's important that we always go back to the goals that the Board of Education has set in place, and to make sure that we use those as a point of focus, and we never get distracted from that. And creating a budget that is responsible, fiscally responsible, but at the same time that meets the students, meets the needs of the students. And sometimes, in times like this, it's important to remain creative and to remain focused on that vision, and be able to reallocate the resource. Because I said to to the administrators and the teachers all the time is like sometimes we have to reevaluate what we had. Something that we had 10 years ago, it may not be useful today. So we have to figure out a way to navigate to that reallocation of resource, which is critical. So the focus for the budget, I think at this point, is stay within the tax cap, which is important, and obviously create a budget that it will stay. Keep an eye on a multi-year analysis, and we've done a lot of work behind the scene, and I want to thank Ms. Freeman for helping me navigating through that. Keep an eye on what the budget looks like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and make sure that there is continuity in terms of the proposed levy that we have this year and for years to come, because a fluctuation in the levy is never a good thing for the community and for the taxpayers. Obviously, the COVID expense is something that we have to keep in mind. September hopefully will look like much better than we are right now. Things are getting better. Vaccines are going around more and more. So I think that there is a feeling that there is a light at the end of this tunnel. Long-term and short-term analysis of reserves, as you can see in the next few presentations, we'll focus on that because we want to make sure that we keep the reserves in compliance with the regulations, but at the same time budget in a way that is fiscally responsible. So when you look at the budget today, it's very simple concept, and as a former math teacher, I enjoy this the most because it's like a simple, very simple equation. The one on the left has to be equal to the one on the right. And you can be creative, you can be as creative as you want, but the expense is got to be equal to the revenue. So when you look at what we have in place, the tax levy is mostly 89–90% that comes from the community. That's a lot on the community, and that's why we need to focus and pay attention on how do we build the budget. State aid, fortunately in a way and unfortunately in other ways, we only receive about 5.4% from state aid. And when you think about the state aid, with potential cuts from state aid of 20%, that could hurt a district that is relying a lot on state aid. For us, we only rely about 5%, which is quite enough in a small district like our district. But that state aid is another component, and then reserve and fund balance and the miscellaneous. Sometimes tuition, other revenue, interest, that add up to pretty much what we have in terms of revenue. When you look at the expense side of the budget, that's kind of interesting because you look at 55% that is based on salary, and then you have all the contractual obligation and benefits that we have. So looking at the revenue, to look at details, 5.4 comes from state aid. Other revenue of the budget is about 5.6%, and that's pretty much reserves, the use of reserves. In a simple way, reserves are the leftover money that at the end of the year you don't spend. They go back in reserves, fund balance, and some other revenues. And then you looking at the tax levy, what the community pays in tax, and that's about 89%. And we spend a lot of time on that number because obviously we want to make sure that is a number that the community can afford to support the needs of our students. So when you look at the allowable tax levy, that's a number that is a lot of it sometimes is difficult to understand because we have a lot of discussion out there. So when you look at the tax levy, it is the limit at which we can raise tax every year, and so is the amount the school district is able to propose without going over a certain percentage. So when you look at how do we arrive at that number, I kind of put it in a very simple formula. You look pretty much at the prior year tax levy. So whatever was the tax levy last year, You add other factors sometimes, and it's a very simple formula. It's an 8-step formula. You multiply, subtract, add, very, very simple. And so some of the variables are the CPI, which is this year is at 1.23%, very low. And that's the number that is fluctuating pretty much every year without our control. You're looking at the pilots, payment in lieu of taxes, and property growth factor, and the capital exclusion. When you put all those variables in, we end up with the allowable tax levy. So one of the sort of the unknown every year is that the growth factor, the CPI, is fluctuating every year. So this year is a 1.23, last year was a 1.8, and every year it changes, and that's set by the controller. We have pretty much, I don't want to say we have no control, but that's a number that we have to deal with that has an impact on our proposed, on the allowable levy that we have. The most important thing is that when people look at the Consumer Price Index, which is a 1.23, the CPI, that is different than the allowable tax levy, because the CPI is just one variable that is part of that calculation. And so sometimes people confuse the 2% tax cap, and the question is that I get all the time. Sometimes I talk to everybody about the budget, even when I go to a restaurant or any place, because I try to practice as much as I can. A lot of people say, it's always a 2% tax cap. How come is lower, how come is higher? Because that 2% is just the CPI, and that number is fluctuating, but the allowable tax levy, it's what comes from all the other calculation, prior levy, growth factor, and all of that. So when we take all this into account, what does it mean for Oyster Bay, East Norwich community? Is that the allowable tax levy right now is a 1.40%. So that's a number that is pretty much set. That's how much you're allowed to raise your tax without going for a supermajority. So let's look at real numbers now, and let's have an understanding of what we have. And again, I'm posting this on the website, so please, if you have any question, do not hesitate to call us. So when you look at the revenue, right, we have pretty much the state aid. Last year we had $3.3 million, and now this year we have a $3.2 million. So we have a reduction of $100,000 in state aid that we received from the first run of the governor's budget. There's been a lot of conversation about the waiting for the federal funding. So sometimes from January to April, that state aid that number could change based on negotiation between the Senate, the Assembly, and our legislators. And we continue to meet with them. We have meetings with our local legislators, our senators, because we want to advocate for our students and for our schools. In terms of reserves, use of reserves that we had last year is $350,000. We maintained that the same. The use of fund balance, we increased just a little bit, about 1.144, 1,144,500. And in terms of others, you see that there is a slight reduction. When you're talking about others, we're talking about payments, tuition that we receive, interest, and other values. In terms of tax levy, raising at 1.4%. So you'll see that last year the tax levy was a $53,666,000, and this year with the increase of 1.4 is a $54,416,000. So you see an interesting factor that on the total revenue, which has to be obviously equal to the expense side of the budget, we are raising pretty much about roughly about 1.4%. 749. The difference between last year's budget and this year's budget. But what's interesting when you look at the blue line and the white line at the bottom, you see that 54 million comes from the community and 61 million is the total budget. So there is a little bit of that 89-90% comes from the community. So when you look at the I call it wiggle room that we have, the only thing that we have when we trying to put them at the same level, and obviously we have the variables that we have, the only flexibility that we have in terms of wiggle room that we have is the amount of fund balance and reserves that we use. The rest is pretty much set by the legislators, set by the levy, how much we can raise the tax, and other, pretty much other revenues that we have there are set in place. So the only fluctuation that we have, and that's the conversation that we're going to continue to have, is on the reserve and fund balance use. So if right now we expected $100,000 decrease in state aid. If that number will change, hopefully will change for the positive, we will go back and reduce that fund balance or reserve use to make sure that the revenue side is equal to the expense side. There's not much fluctuation, but I'm always hopeful. So if a month from now we come back and we say we are 200 over in terms of state aid instead of being 100 under, then at that point we will adjust the fund balance and reserves, the use of reserves that we're allocating to the budget. Ms. Freeman, how am I doing? So far, so good? Excellent. So a summary of the budget. So we have a $6,621,000 that comes from revenue, 54 tax levy of 1.4, and the proposed budget for 21-22 is 61 million. So the question that I get all the time is based on this budget. When you look at this budget, because so much that is going on with COVID and so much that is going on the expenses, we're gonna provide some details in the next presentation, a little bit more details. You saw tonight a proposed increase of a language, Mandarin, Chinese teacher for our program. But overall, we're not looking at a major increase. I want to say continuing with the programs that we have. Obviously we're looking at long-term. And the other thing that we're very fortunate in this district, that there was a lot of work that it was initiated, done, capital work that it was done. So this is a good year to kind of regroup, see where we are, and then continue with what we have. Unless we received some great news, and then at that point we'll come back to you and recommend some ways to provide students with additional programs. The difference between the budget obviously is 749 compared to two of them together, and that's based on the January budget, and those are the budget timeline, a budget vote, and our next presentation. I want to, Ms. Kowalski, I want to open to the board if they have any questions.
Sure. Is there any questions? So in terms of capital work and projects that were approved, I'm going to continue to give the board and the community an update on the next presentation in terms of what was approved and what was done and what we're going to continue to do. At this point,
In terms of teaching staff, in terms of, programs that we have, as of right now, with the numbers that we have, the foreign language at the elementary level was one item, but we're also looking at, maintaining the technology that we have and the structure. And at this point, we're also doing a lot of work behind the scene in terms of leveraging E-rate and other smart bond, the money that were already set in place, and infrastructure that was kind of updated. And you saw it at last presentation with Ms. Ostroff, that it was kind of shared where we were with cybersecurity and all of that.
I know last year, I think we didn't do a few projects. We wanted to hold back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I know this year with the expense with COVID and everything, just to look at those projects, and if we don't have the funding for it, we'll just hold off again and, wait till the following year if we have to. I know there was a few other projects we looked at, and the board decided not to do it because of the
So I've been reviewing with our architectural firm and the entire team. There is one project that is in the work right now, which is planned to be completed by the summer, is the AC in the gymnasium. There was one project that it was was approved, but the board decided not to go for it. The parking lot at Theodore Roosevelt on the side. There is a bathroom project that is going to be completed in the summer at Theodore Roosevelt, and there are some boiler project that is being completed here, and I will provide an update next board meeting to the community so they can also see it.
Thank you.
Dr. Yanni, when do you think we'll get an expenditure budget present? Is that for the next meeting?
So the expenditure budget in terms of line by line budget.
No, in your presentation here, you had mentioned that possibly expenses were not going to equal revenues, and perhaps we had to look to reserves. I'm just curious as to where we're at. Like, we know where pretty much our revenue budget is. Do we kind of have a sense as what the number on the expenditure budget will be?
So right now, in terms of, at the next presentation, we will have sort of what we have in terms of programs, if there is an increase, and obviously anything that we would like to recommend to the board. In terms of the analysis, almost line by line, it's something that the board will be obviously have a preview to it, and then we'll post it, as we have done in the past. Right now, looking at what we have, we have been we've rolled over in terms of capital project, continue on finishing up what was started, but rolled over pretty much what we have, and once you complete all the staffing, come back with the expense side of the budget.
Great. And Ms. Freeman, have we received any CARES Act funds to cover any COVID expenses to date, or? Do we expect that we'll get anything covered by the CARES Act?
That is changing, and some of the districts are getting a little more than they anticipated. So we will be working on that. Christine will be working on it.
Yeah. So far, is it our understanding that any federal stimulus money going to the state is only going to potentially make us whole on state aid? We're not aware of getting any COVID expenses covered with that at this point.
Right now, I think the only amount that was included in the budget was that the governor was expecting, and that's included, the $6 billion from federal government. So hopefully that money will come in, but that's already included in that state aid. Am I correct?
Well, they're anticipating another $6 million come in, and they built that into the budget. But what is included and then taken out is the money that the federal government, the stimulus package from December.
Right,
So basically,
because the government gave money for schools, but it seems that he's only covering our state aid with that, not our COVID expenses, right?
Right, whatever we would have gotten, the governor has said, that's what I would have taken away anyway, so it's in and out
Yeah.
at this point.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Dr. Yanni.
Thank
It was
you.
an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
To personnel actions. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the following professional personnel, civil service personnel resolutions as listed. And that goes down to page middle of 7. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes,
Have
Mr.
have we ever granted tenure to a teaching assistant before?
It was done in the past. They're part of the teachers' union.
Yes.
We have?
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to business actions. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the following business resolution as listed. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Move on to special services. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the following special services resolutions as listed. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. New business. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the following new business resolutions as listed. That goes on to the middle of page 9. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
For the play this year, does it have to be virtual? Or are we allowed to have a play live? Like,
It's, at this point, it's virtual.
okay. So the pit will be as part of the virtual
Yes.
performance?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And now we go down to our discussion, which is the Board of Education meeting dates.
I set some, I gave the board some dates for our next year's meeting, 21, 22. Pretty much following the same kind of, same schedule, 2 meetings a month. It's every Tuesday. It was like, put in a Friday update. Pretty much consistent with what we have this year. I can have the board, I can send it again. That looks like, it looks like, I can pass it around. It looks like the boxes that we have with the, I mean, it's just an item for discussion and set up the dates when we set the calendar. So if the board has any question, I can review those dates. Same thing, every other Tuesday.
We also have some new policies for the first reading from the policy committee, and they'll be on the agenda for adoption next meeting, right? Okay, do you want to move on to the Friday packet? I have a question about the testing.
Yeah.
So where will the testing take place? Will it be at the high school, you think, or
The,
the COVID testing for the high-risk athletes?
right now, we are, I spoke to the group that is going to run those tests, and I'm envisioning they're going to be outside, and that would be an opportunity for, we test all the high-risk students, but also community members that would like to
Really? So
get
any
tested.
community member?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
great.
Teachers, community members, and, obviously they bring their insurance card and,
And is this rapid or the PCR test?
Rapid.
Rapid test.
mhm.
And will it be there all, do you think it'll be all day Saturday? So, because the kids will have to be able to,
We will send a notification out, but I believe it's Saturday 10 to 4 or 10 to 3, but we will send notice out.
Dr. Yanni,
Yep.
when they had it at the firehouse, the local firehouse, you had to make an appointment in order for, like, I think your insurance to be covered, et cetera. Do we know, like, if the community wanted to come and get tested, would they need an appointment ahead of time?
I don't think.
I believe, but we will check on this, that there will be something that you can do online to make an appointment. Okay?
Great. And I guess our athletes will get first priority, and then if there's room
Yes.
in the community. That's great.
Yeah, we had contracted with a different company, and this was just literally a few minutes before the starting of the meeting. So we'll make sure that we send details to obviously to the athletes, and we put something out there for the community if they're willing to come here to be tested.
Will this be every Saturday while the sports
Yes.
seasons are in
Yes,
session?
yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Yanni, hi, this is Darren Jabos here.
Mhm.
On the testing, so it said it's mandatory, and then it also said with parents' consent. So if you are playing a high-risk sport, you must get tested to participate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. What happens if somebody tests positive? So at what point we've had practice all week, and somebody tests positive on a Friday or Saturday? Is it the whole team is now quarantined for X period of time? I mean, if they are high-risk sport, how would we possibly, they are playing with masks, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
how would I'm just trying to get ahead of the quarantining rules if there is a positive test, unfortunately, what that looks like affecting children attending school, and does it shut the program down, or what?
So if a student will test positive, then at that point we'll follow that protocol in terms of contact tracing and all the work that we have done. When you look at sports and you look at what we have in place, obviously is, the testing that we do, it puts us, it's another level of security for our students and for our community. But in terms of how do we move forward once we have a positive case, is the same thing that we have been doing every time, if they get a test on the outside. One thing that we have in place, though, is the screening that takes place in the morning, so the temperature checking and what goes on at home. So, knock on wood, we've been very fortunate that in school has been nothing going on in school. I mean, and even the few cases that we had, they were either quarantining before, and
Sure.
we're following all the protocols. But it's a new thing to us. When you look at basketball, for example, this afternoon I was in the gymnasium, and it was different to see the athletes running with the mask, but even on the sideline, they were 6 feet apart with the mask. So we're following all those protocols. I mean, I wish, Mr. Gerbosi, I wish I had a better answer for you. I'm dancing around. I don't know what it looks like. I
so
hope
the students do have to,
I was it pretty good. I mean, nobody knows at this point.
so the students do have to wear masks while they're wrestling and while they're playing basketball?
As
Yes.
much as they can tolerate. And it was impressive to see them
Yeah, it's hard.
running with the mask. I mean, the gym, we open the doors, but students want to be here. They're
Yep.
resilient. They're strong, more than you can ever think, and it was nice to see it.
That's great.
Are we allowing spectators at sports, or is it just?
Not at this time. We're not allowing spectators, but I've been working with the director of athletics to make sure that our senior parents will have an opportunity to see their kids play.
Oh, that's great.
Mhm.
It's actually no one, so even
Will they be videotaped?
a member of the team that was injured had to leave the gym today.
Video, yes,
They
we're
will.
streaming every time.
You'll be streaming
Yeah,
all the
the
matches?
video was streamed tonight.
That's great.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions from the Friday packet?
Just, our crew did an outstanding job on the snow removal all throughout the district.
Yeah.
Early, not nice, very good job.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting and go back into exec for personnel and legal?
Negotiation. Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Second?
Second.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you. Have a good night.